So I'm Mike Connolly. I'm the new state representative for Cambridge and Somerville. It's wonderful to be here. I came straight from the State House where we always have a lot going on, and unfortunately, thanks to Donald Trump, we have even more things to worry about every day. So I'm sorry I missed some of the earlier discussion, but it's really great to be on this panel with Quentin and Phineas, and really want to highlight to everyone how useful the Massachusetts Budget Policy Center is. I've been going to their website for many years trying to understand what's going on in our Commonwealth, how our taxing and spending actually work, and I'd certainly encourage everyone to read that site. It's such a resource, so thank you for all the work that you do. When I think about, the impact of the federal budget on Massachusetts, really my starting place is to really think about what's going on with our own state budget. And again, a lot of my understanding of the state budget honestly comes from the work that they're doing at the Mass Budget Policy Center. So my starting point for everyone to understand our budget is to take the state budget circa the year 2000 and adjust it for inflation. And what you will see is our state budget is about $3.5 billion less today on an annual basis than it was 15 or 20 years ago after you adjust for inflation. And as a matter of fact, there are certain accounts, take for example the MRVP program, the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program. This is a flagship program that we use to try to house people who have low incomes. That account actually had more money in real dollars in the 1990s than it does today. So we've actually, not even adjusting for inflation, but in actual real dollars, we have programs that are vital programs, affordable housing, education programs, investments in transit. We're really not getting the job done. And so that is why last year, the State House News Service, which we all rely on for very sort of unbiased professional reporting up at the State House, once the budget was adopted last year, they said, fiscal year 2018 Massachusetts state budget is the latest in a long line of austerity budgets here in Massachusetts. And it's really unfortunate, and this is one of the things that really called me to wanting to do this work, to wanting to serve our community, to wanting to get involved up on Beacon Hill, is this idea that here in, progressive blue Massachusetts, here in the home of, our Senator Elizabeth Warren, here in the home of a supermajority Democratic Massachusetts state legislature, we are experiencing and we are moving forward with an ongoing program of austerity. And when you think about what's happened on the federal level, when you think about how at this moment we are now creating yet another windfall for the people at the very top, it really strikes me as, this is the time when here on the state level we have every reason and every justification and every sense of urgency to try to change the dynamics of our state budget and to move away from this program of austerity. And so we heard Phineas, is that how I pronounce it? Phineas? Great. We heard Phineas, maybe I'll stand up a bit too. We heard Phineas mention the Fair Share Amendment, and so without a doubt, the Fair Share Amendment is really our best hope this year to really make a dent in this $3.5 billion annual gap that we've seen emerge over the past 15 years. And so the Fair Share Amendment is a constitutional amendment. It's really unfortunate, just so everyone understands, many of you probably know this, here in Massachusetts, income is taxed at one flat rate. We essentially have the Republican right-wing dream. I mean, that's sort of their dream, is let's just have a flat tax, right? Well, that is how income is taxed here in Massachusetts, and that goes back to a Supreme Judicial Court interpretation that said same classes of property had to be taxed the same way. And so that's been understood to mean that all income has to be taxed at the same rate. So what we're doing with the Fair Share Amendment is literally amending our state constitution to say, it's okay for individuals who earn in excess of $1 million to take whatever portion of income they earn over $1 million and expect and ask and require them to contribute an additional 4% tax on that portion over $1 million. And so I appreciate when you had, sometimes it's called the millionaire's tax, and then we correct ourselves because we don't want you to think, many of you here in Cambridge, if you own a home and you start adding up all the things that you have, maybe on paper you're worth $1 million, but we're not looking to go after you. We're actually only targeting the people whose annual incomes are in excess of $1 million. So what happens if we do pass the Fair Share Amendment? Because there's really two steps. The legislature has to vote to put it on the ballot. I was really proud this year to cast that vote that sent it to the November ballot. Then in November, the people have to approve it. And if people do approve it, and I'm very hopeful that they will, it will yield approximately $2 billion a year, which of course will go a long way to making up that $3.5 billion annual gap that we've seen emerge over the past 15 years or so. And of course, I really appreciate getting these numbers. You said it was about $9 billion is being sent back in 2019, with that $9 billion being dramatically skewed to the very highest income earners. So you can appreciate, with that being the context, it really makes the case for us endorsing and supporting this Fair Share Amendment all the much more stronger. So certainly, that's something I think is very important. I'll share just a couple of other little points on this tax stuff. You all, who here is aware of the fact that here in Massachusetts, the income tax rate actually goes down every year? Do people know this? Show of hands. Some people know it. Many people don't. I've had meetings with journalists. I've had meetings with, really informed, connected people who think and write about public policy. And they're not aware that baked into our tax code here in Massachusetts is a 0.05% annual step down. And that resulted because 20 years ago or so, voters actually were given a question to reduce taxes by a pretty significant amount. And then the legislature, in response to that, decided that they couldn't do it all at once, so they would implement that step down year by year by year. I actually, in my first year in the legislature, was one of just a few people who stood up and said we should freeze this step down because few people even know that they're getting this extra money in their checks. And unfortunately, with so many needs, whether we're talking transit, education, housing, we really, ought to take advantage of it. So I actually stood up. I tried to get support for freezing the step down. Unfortunately, was not able to get more than a few colleagues to stand in support of it. And for my efforts, the Boston Herald actually wrote an editorial criticizing me and saying I was a hypocrite. I posted the editorial on my Facebook page and was proud of the fact that the Herald was mad at me for trying to get some more revenue. So I really don't care if they choose to criticize these efforts. Of course, I would like to have progressive taxation, but again, with this constitutional framework that we have, there's certain limited ways for us to try to get there. Trying to think what else to share with you in the final minute or two that I have. I guess I'll just say, I think that we now have a real opportunity. I think that it's, few people, I don't know how many people in this room knew that we're in a program of austerity in our state. I don't know how many people really understand that our state uses a tax structure that is favored by the right wing and favored by conservatives. I don't know how many people really understand how much of our state is really compromised by this revenue. And so I guess, my hope putting this all together is that we can take some of this knowledge that we have about what this new Trump tax scam really means and we can use it to hopefully empower all of us to advocate on the state level to do what we can to make taxation and spending a lot more progressive and a lot more fair here in our Commonwealth. And so certainly something I'm interested to do. I'm really happy to be here and to be on the panel, and look forward to continue to work with you all on these issues. Thank you.